Welcome to the Hembury Books Podcast. Today, our guest is David Kadavy, who is the best-selling author of Mind Management, Not Time Management, The Heart to Start, and Design for Hackers. His self-published books have sold more than 100,000 copies and are being translated into a dozen languages. His weekly newsletter, Love Mondays, has over 10,000 subscribers. David lives in a cabin in the mountains outside Medellin in Colombia. Thanks for coming on the podcast, David.
Jessica, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on the show.
It's really exciting. And I have been a subscriber to your excellent newsletter for a long time, since I first published my self-published book in 2021. And congratulations on your latest book, which is How to Sell a Book, What I've Learned Selling 100,000 Self-Published Nonfiction Books. Wow, there it is.
Here it is. It's right here.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful cover, really unusual art too. I really like it. 100,000 is very, very impressive. What's your strategy for selling books?
Well, I try to write about what I think is interesting to me to start. But at the same time, I do keep my finger on the pulse of the market. Like I say in the book, I talk about this idea that there's like three different types of books. That there's the white swan books, the black swan books, and the gray swan books. And it's based off of this concept that Nassim Taleb talks about of the white swan, the black swan, basically. This idea that if you see a million white swans, you can't be sure that black swans don't exist. You might think that they don't because you've seen so many white swans. But really, really successful books are kind of like black swans in this way, that you can't really engineer them from the beginning. You can't really decide what book is going to sell like 10 million copies, but it's probably not going to be like a book on macrame or something. Like it's going to be something unusual, right? And so I've
like tidying up.
The tidying up thing. I mean, who saw that coming? Who knew? Yeah, right. So maybe a book on macrame could be a black swan, actually, because who knows? So I think that as an author, it helps to approach every book that you're writing, giving yourself a clear idea of whether you're writing a white swan book, which is something that like fits very clearly into a category. It's very clear what the book is about. Like I've got a book called How to Write a Book, pretty clear what that's about. How to Sell a Book, pretty clear what that's about. I have a book called Digital Zettelkasten, which people who are into Zettelkasten, that's very clear what it's about. A lot of other people just think that's weird, but that book sold almost 18,000 copies. Now, the books that have done best for me have been sort of gray swan books as I call them. So Design for Hackers, Mind Management, Not Time Management, The Heart to Start. These books all fit into a category, but they're a twist on the category. So there's a little bit of hedging that you're pretty sure it's going to sell some copies, but because you put a twist on it, it might sell a few more, but it's probably not going to be a black swan. So like Design for Hackers, around 18,000 copies. The Heart to Start, 30,000 copies. Mind Management, Not Time Management, 44,000, getting close to 45,000 copies right now. So we're not talking about 10 million copies here, but I mean, those are pretty solid numbers. And so I do try to fit things into a category. Now, I have made some sort of black swan plays before. Like I wrote this one insane book called In Defense of Papyrus, and it's just all about the papyrus font and how even though people hate the papyrus font, like maybe it's actually basically about this SNL skit that has Ryan Gosling in it, and it's just a silly, stupid book. And I kind of wrote it just because I felt like I kind of wanted to, but it sold literally barely more than 100 copies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's gotten me some press coverage. Mm-hmm. So there's been some unexpected things that happened, but it was one of these things where just like, I don't really know what's going to happen with this book. and it didn't work out.
Or it
Now,
could be a
fortunately,
sleeper. It could be a sleeper and
sleep.
explode in a year.
Yeah, maybe it will. Now, fortunately, so far, the books that I've spent the most time on, and that are my biggest books have been the Gray Swan books, and those have all fortunately sold decently. I haven't had one flop yet, but I do think that it's important to keep in mind sort of category, the market, have a clear idea that there is a market for this book idea, but to present your own unique point of view, give yourself a chance to sell a few more copies than you might if you were just selling, how to butter toast.
You've got to absolutely always remain yourself, I think, because you don't stand a chance, I think, if you're trying to imitate someone else who's successful, because it's people resonate with you, whatever you write about, it's your take, your insights, I think. So let's not worry about AI. Do you worry about AI?
Yeah. I think that what you said is true. You have to be yourself in what you're writing. Now, being yourself is hard. I mean, it's hard to figure out who you are. It takes a while. It takes a lot of us our entire lives. I'm still figuring it out all the time. Figuring out to what extent are you like emulating certain heroes of yours or people who have influenced you. You've got to sort of feel that out where, you're kind of maybe some authors that I've modeled myself after have been like Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. The Hard to Start was definitely a play on that self-help creativity genre. Seth Godin has been a big influence. And, I can look at my writing from certain times and see myself sort of channeling those people. But now I think I'm getting more and more where I have my own voice there. I have my own clearer idea of who I am. But so, I think that's true. That's what gives you a chance to make a hit, I think. AI, am I worried about AI? There are some parts of it that are bothersome now, such as that I think that Amazon is really dealing with this tidal wave of low quality content being submitted. We can talk about that, but I also do think that in some ways it replaces books. I mean, I know for myself, if I really want to understand a complex subject, there's just nothing better than having a chat with ChatGPT about it and saying like, well, especially like I've done a lot of research on Renaissance Italy and Leonardo da Vinci and Raphael for a book that I'm working on. And that stuff is like, you have to read so many books before you can really understand that subject. But you could talk with ChatGPT and say like, okay, so would it be a stretch to say this? And it would say like, well, no, like, and it will tell you like what assumptions, how far off base are you with that sort of stuff. So I think that's really cool. Now it's all, of course, coming out of like base source material. And that's why I think it's also probably even more important as like a nonfiction author, if you want to be a relevant nonfiction author, to have that personal voice and to have your personality shine through on things. Because if you are writing just informational content, which normally would have been a white swan book that people were searching for this keyword, and so that this book is going to sell some copies, I think that's probably going to be the stuff that suffers the most. I like to think that the more that you're sharing unique ideas, that those books will still live on. Because, as much as it's nice to chat with ChatGPT about something that I'm curious about, sometimes I just want to try on somebody else's brain. And there's just no substitute for a book for that. So I'm not especially concerned about it at this point. I do think that like ChatGPT, as I always say, is like a bad writer's idea of a good writer. Like you see it write something, you're like, oh my gosh, it's writing something. It's like a talking dog a little bit. Now it's great for like formal letters, like especially living in Colombia where my Spanish it is okay, but it takes a lot of effort for me to like write a formal letter. It takes a lot of effort for me to write a formal letter in English because you got to be like, it's just a bunch of like blusteriness or something. So I could just like write ChatGPT like, hey, I'll write to my homeowners association about how I really hate the leaf blowers, and I'll just like give my filtered angry feelings about the leaf blowers, and it'll write like a nice diplomatic letter for me, and I could just send that off. Like that's awesome, but that's not how I write a book. Like if you write a book that way, then your books aren't defensible.
Yeah, totally. It's funny, like when Grammarly pops up and says, like, warns you about the tone of your email, and you're like, okay, I'll soften it. I'm just being businesslike.
Could never get into Grammarly. I could never.
Well,
tried it for 5 minutes, and I just was like, can't.
It's with me. It feels like without my permission, but it catches the odd typo, so I leave it on, but I'm not like paying for it, and then it can be very annoying.
Maybe I should try it again.
Yeah, perhaps it has pros and cons like everything. From a business point of view, I would love to ask why direct sales are the most important, and also of these 100,000 books, which channels are the top for you in terms of where you're selling?
Sure. I'll start with that part, which is basically that I think maybe Amazon tends to be about 75% of my sales. I'll just say it's probably revenue. That's probably total copies sold too. That's shifting over the years. So like, the Heart to Start, I talked about this in the book. I've got like the exact numbers. It's something like the first year, I think I made like 2% outside of Amazon, but now it's becoming a larger share. Whereas like My Management, Not Time Management, 75% of it has been Amazon, 25% of it's been outside of Amazon. That's shifting. So I'm concentrating a lot on direct sales lately. I've built a Shopify store. I started off, baby steps with PayHip and BookFunnel. And so now Book Vault has the print on demand component. And I've even gotten to the point now where I have a warehouse in the United States where I have a few books there. Like, it's not my warehouse. I'm contracting with a warehouse. Just because the Book Vault books print on demand, it takes like 3 weeks for them to arrive. And I can't stand like telling my customers to wait 3 weeks for books. Especially if I'm doing anything like cold traffic stuff where I'm paying for like Facebook traffic. Like a customer who maybe a super fan will wait 3 weeks for your book, but somebody who's never heard of you, to ask them to wait 3 weeks for your book is absurd. So yeah, I'm shipping books from a warehouse that way too. And I have been so impressed with Shopify. It is like the coolest product that I've used in recent memory. And as soon as I've used it, like once I used it, I started to realize like, oh, okay, I can see why this is the future, because Amazon has this one-click buy thing. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in the United States, it becomes like, you think of a thing like, oh, I need a toilet brush. So you just like, you do the one click, and then they're like, all these boxes are showing up to your house, and it's like Christmas every day because you forgot what you ordered. So it just becomes very, very easy to order. Well, Shopify, it makes your online store, and you kind of think like, well, how are you going to get people to go to your online store and then enter in the credit card information and enter in their address and all this stuff? But no, like Shopify also works as this sort of information hub that's pushing information to create a meta store, create a store on Facebook, create a store on Instagram, create a store on TikTok. uh, uh, pushes your products to Google Merchant Center that can help your products appear, your books appear in Google searches. The people can't like make the purchase right there, but they can get directed to your website. Or you can make it so you can tag in your YouTube videos, like here's my my book in my store, and it will direct people to your store. So Shopify is this information hub, and they have Shop Pay, and then they, you know, like once a person has made a purchase from any Shopify store, then usually it becomes very easy for them to then make a purchase from any other Shopify store. So, and that applies also to especially like a Facebook store, for example. So Facebook does it where like they're the merchant of record, and they like do all the taxes and everything when somebody buys from a Facebook store. But then it goes to your Shopify dashboard, and that's where you dispatch the orders. And so
Wow.
what Shopify is basically doing then is they've just created a one-click buy for the web. So as soon as somebody's bought from one Instagram store or one Facebook store, bought from one vendor, now when they see your books, they could do one-click buy, and their address information, their payment information is already there. So they've got it's this sort of like bundling, unbundling idea that I've heard Balaji Srinivasan talk about, like this idea that there were various e-commerce stores, and then Amazon sort of bundled it all into one, and now Shopify is like unbundling it all, so everybody has their store, but they're working as like the payment hub, sort of. And
so it's better than you selling books on your own website because of that integration everywhere.
Well, it is my own website. Your Shopify store can have your blog and everything on it. I happen to have my blog hosted separately. It's on the same domain.
Okay.
Now, I will add the caveat. Don't get too excited, everybody. Like, it is a lot of work. Like, you are running a completely different type of business when you are selling your books directly. And it's a lot of work. Even it's questionable whether it's worth it, even for somebody who's sold 100,000 books. But I like that control. I like to like I have the customer data, and I can contact the customers, and I can advertise on Facebook and actually have a clear idea of whether it's converting to sales or not, for example. I can create coupons and all that stuff.
You must fulfill the paperback orders. Ebook, it just goes out automatically. Is that correct? But you must actually arrange the postage and stuff.
Yeah. So it's pretty easy with ebooks. Yeah, ebooks and audiobooks with Book Funnel. There's all these services that start with books, so hopefully I won't mess up any of them. But Book Funnel, so there's just like you have your SKU or whatever the name of it is in Shopify, and you can interface it with, I forget even how it works, but you can set up a delivery action in Book Funnel, and it just makes it so that the Book Funnel emails with all the download instructions go straight to the person who purchased the book. And if they happen to have any trouble, Book Funnel has this wonderful, personally, I have a wonderful like sort of wizard that helps somebody download just the right format for their device. But then if they have any trouble, Book Funnel also provides customer service, so you could just forward on any emails that have questions, and their customer service team will help you with it. But then, when it comes to mailing stuff, you can do Book Vault, but then that's like I say, it's like 3 weeks to the US. They're they're printing in the UK. They do have some printing in the US as well. I haven't heard great things about it. Their specs are definitely limited with that. You can really just kind of do like a paperback with white paper. One thing you could do is do drop shipping, where you would just go onto Ingram Spark and order the book to the person who bought it. Now, a lot of these things are tough for me to wrap my head around because I come from a bit of a tech background. I worked in Silicon Valley for a while, so I'm always thinking like, oh, it's got to be automated. It's got to be something that I like. It has to be hands off. But you can just keep books in your closet and throw them in the mail. You can order copies from Ingram Spark directly to the person. You can order author copies from Amazon directly to the person. Now, those will have like your costs printed on the packing slip. Ingram Spark, I thought would have the cost, but at least the one that I sent to myself, it doesn't have the cost on the packing slip. Now, that's going to depend upon, how warm is this reader? Is this a super fan who doesn't mind seeing that you charge them $20 for a book and it costs you $4?
It's not how you want to do business.
It depends. Well, yeah, I mean, it depends. Some people are fine with that. Now, so what I've done is, what I've got in the U.S. is baby steps. It's kind of like a friend of a friend's boutique warehouse that I have, some books there, and they just ship them media mail. And so that way, instead of them taking 3 weeks, they take like a week, sometimes just a few days. But it's significant costs that way because one, I have to get the books to the warehouse, which usually costs $1, $1.50 per book. That particular warehouse has a very flat fee for me, where they're charging me like $4 to pick the book, and then $1 for each additional item that they put into a thing, but they're not charging me any receiving costs or storage costs or even materials costs, or like envelopes and stuff like that. Whereas there's other like larger services such as Shipmonk, which are really big, and they've got a million different things they charge for. They might charge you just for like receiving the books, and then there's going to be a storage charge based on square footage. You can like rent this bin or that bin, or it starts to get pretty complicated. I mean, even the way I'm doing it is quite complicated. Lots of spreadsheets going on, lots of like crunching the numbers to try to see like how can I get the best possible margin, per book.
Yeah.
And I'm not even at a volume yet where it's really like resulting in a great deal of profit, but I enjoy the challenge of figuring it out so far.
That's what I was going to ask, because sometimes writers say, I just want to write. I don't want to do the business side. I love the business side. Clearly, doing more business than writing now. Are your days still primarily about writing, or do you divide them into sort of marketing, sales, the logistics and things?
Definitely less and less of my day is spent writing than before. And I'm conflicted about that. I'm not sure whether that's the right thing or not. Because I like to think that I would like to just do the writing too. But if I see an opportunity to make my business more robust, make it more secure, increase margins and things like that, I want to do that. I want to figure that stuff out. And one way that I was doing that previously was simply being wide, because like that was the big debate, was like, oh, should you do just Amazon, or are you gonna
go wide?
Publish in other places? Like, it was a little crazy to even do that. And I've done that since the beginning, and it's a lot of extra work, and it's not a lot of extra money. But it's an investment in the security of your business. I mean, we could talk about the issue I'm having with Amazon right now with this new book, How to Sell a Book. And they've blocked the publishing of the book, and that just is it's really driving home that it's so important to have as much control as you possibly can, if that's the business you want to be in, indie author.
Have you had any communications from them as to the reason why they've blocked your book?
I think I've got I think I have a clear idea now, like reading between the lines. So just to fill people in, I have submitted How to Sell a Book to be published on Amazon as a paperback. and I received sort of an automated message that was very vague about what the issue was. I thought maybe it was about the claim of having sold 100,000 books. I sent them evidence of that claim, and then the response was, well, it has book in the title. That's not, you can't do that. And like, well, but I responded, well, that's
How to write a book.
I don't know what else to call the book. That's what the book's called. Like and then I started to get other responses that were like, no, well, maybe it's because it's the book in the title and the subtitle. Like if I read between the lines, I can see like maybe if I had a chance to resubmit, I might be able to get through to them. But they simply blocked the book at this point. I'm not able to edit the book. I'm not able to re-upload the book with the same ISBN. Now, strangely, the book is still available on Amazon as a paperback because I published it on Ingram Spark before I put it on Amazon. And so Ingram Spark's feed goes into Amazon. And I know from experience that Amazon has kind of a mysterious algorithm that decides whether or not to keep one of those Ingram Spark books in stock. And apparently they've gotten signals, whether it's people searching for my book or visiting the Amazon, the Ingram Spark Amazon page for it, that it has the Prime logo next to it and people can pre-order it. It's intentionally, available directly through me and then on Amazon like a month later. So people can order the book on Amazon, but it's the Ingram Spark version of the book. So it's very scary because on like the 20 books to 50K Facebook group, great Facebook group.
Right. Yeah.
You hear everything on there. Like it's definitely a good place to go if you want to get really paranoid about what's going to happen. Because one person will tell you, well, because it's available on Ingram Spark, that's going to get you blocked on both platforms. And then one person says, well, you just need to keep replying to customer service until you shake something loose and then they'll accept your book. And then somebody else says, well, that got my entire account blocked.
Yeah.
So you just kind of scary. You feel like you're walking on eggshells. Now, where it stands right now is that I have talked to Alliance of Independent Authors, of which I'm a member.
Yeah.
They're great for the Ingram Spark discounts and the Book Vault discounts, but they also advocate for authors on this apparently. So I've emailed with somebody there, shared them everything about my case, and they've explained, first of all, that Amazon is dealing with a difficult issue, and then there's a lot of this low quality AI content being submitted, and so they're using AI to try to filter out the bad stuff. And so maybe there's not actually humans looking and reasoning about whether this book should be published or not. And so apparently they have some contact information where they have some direct line with Amazon, and I'm just kind of waiting to hear the next thing from them.
Oh gosh, but there's no logic to it because you're actively encouraging other authors to be successful, and their success is Amazon's success. So yeah, you're a best-selling author. It just makes no sense.
It's certainly something where it's clear that there's no rational human who has interacted with and made a decision about this book if they did. And that's part of the reason why when people say like, well, you're going to get blocked on Ingram Spark and Amazon at the same time, I'm a little bit like, well, if I got blocked on Ingram Spark, at least, I'm pretty sure I can talk to a human being who would clearly see that this isn't, I'm not doing anything nefarious with this book.
No, it's a decision made in error. Gosh, that's so stressful. I was wondering what's your advice to authors? There are so many books. We've got human books, we've got AI books. What's your advice on how to make a book stand out in a sea of competition and in the genre of nonfiction?
I mean, I think that it starts with your everyday conversation that you're having with your audience. On some channel, besides books. Now, you could sit there and just keep publishing books. And I think there are people who they just read books and they're not on social media and maybe they're not subscribed to any email lists or anything like that. But I like to think of it like the model of stand-up comedy. I'm a huge stand-up comedy fan, and they all do it the same way, which is they go to open mics, or they get an idea, they write it down, then maybe they flesh it out, or they just go to an open mic and they tell their jokes and they kind of see, like, is anybody laughing at this, or am I seeing, maybe if they're not laughing, I'm seeing something in their eyes that makes me think I'm onto something. And you keep doing that, you keep iterating on that, and then you play the smaller clubs, and then you shoot a special, and you put together an hour of material, and that you've got a special. And so I like to think of things that way. Is that have some channel, whether it's X or Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn, or it's your blog and your email list, something where you're getting some kind of feed, YouTube, something where you're getting some kind of a chance to, on a regular basis, ship some ideas and have a conversation with your audience. And that conversation could just be as much as, well, are they liking this? Are they commenting on this? Getting some sense if you're on the right track, because now it doesn't, things don't necessarily translate perfectly, but generally, like, what is interesting cocktail party conversation will be a decent post on X, will be a decent Instagram reel, will be a decent TikTok reel, provided that you are thinking about the parameters of whatever medium it is that you're working with. And so then that I think is the way to arrive at ideas. One, it's the way to get the following of people who are into your way of thinking, and to find out what your way of thinking is, what your voice is, what people are going to find interesting. And then from that, you will naturally have emerge ideas that then stand out as books. And I think that's the way to stand out.
Doing some market testing. Yeah. What do you think about, what would your advice be for using pricing to sell loads of books?
Pricing promotions are definitely very effective for selling books. I'm working on a YouTube video that I have coming out about my journey to 100,000 sales. And I'm surprised to realize that, like, even though I've sold over 100,000 books, like, I've averaged something like $3.25, $3.27 income per book. Not even profit, that's just revenue per book. Well, now, if you go look on Amazon, I think I have the Heart to Start set at $7. My Management, Not Time Managed at $9.99 right now. So, I should be getting $7 for My Management, Not Time Management, and for the Heart to Start, I should be getting $5 or something like that. But I think a large amount of the books that I've sold have been through, like, BookBub featured deals, and those are 99 cents, $1.99. If you're lucky, $2.99. That seems like it's reserved for the traditionally published books. But pricing definitely makes a big difference in getting people to buy that book, especially the ones who, like, maybe they've seen it, but they just haven't gotten around to buying it. I mean, that's why I subscribe to BookBub, and definitely my rule is I just scroll through the email. If I see anything I recognize that I've thought about buying before, I just buy it. And it's interesting because, yeah.
Isn't BookBub mostly for fiction though? Have you gotten BookBub deals?
Oh yeah, I've gotten BookBub deals for sure. Yeah, for Mind Management, Not Time Management, and The Heart to Start have Mind Management has definitely had multiple BookBub deals. The Heart to Start's definitely had at least one. Yeah, there's an advice and how to category, and there's a business category. Yeah, so those are there.
I need to revisit that.
It's interesting that you could literally like alter the space time continuum and cause somebody's next book they read to be your book instead of somebody else's just because you made it $1.99. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, isn't it? So, for example, an author could run a 2-week price promotion on Amazon where they drop the ebook down to like $4.99 or something, and the paperback, they're still making a profit, but is that something that you recommend as like a way for an author to start playing around with their pricing?
Well, yeah, like if you can't get the BookBub feature deal, and they're very competitive, it's difficult to get one.
They sure are.
Then you can run your own pricing promotion, and you could even use BookBub ads to sort of run your own BookBub promotion. That way, you can like make it $1.99, and people who see BookBub ads are going to be people who are bargain hunters anyway. So it's really going to help if there's a competitive price there. It's something that, like so many things, it really helps to have more than one book. Because say you've got a book at $1.99, you can set one of your other books at $2.99. And with Amazon's royalty structure, the $1.99 book, you're only making like 67 cents because that's a 35% royalty plan. But that $2.99 book, you're making like $2 or $2.09 because you're in the 70% royalty plan. So it can really be, you can have like kind of a loss leader that way. Like I definitely, with my BookBub featured deals, I've written an article that's on my blog, like how I lost $4,000 running a BookBub feature deal, and why I would do it again. Because the deal itself doesn't necessarily make you a profit, but then like people discovering your other books, and then also if your book is good, people are going to recommend it to other people, and other people are going to buy it for full price.
Yeah, you're getting it into
very hard to, it's very hard to sell a book that people don't want to read. That's one thing I found for sure. Yeah.
Do you think, David, that you could have achieved this level of success as a traditionally published author?
I guess it all kind of depends on how I define success. Like if success is sales, I probably could have sold more as a traditionally published author. But I more and more I just, it's hard to imagine doing a traditional published deal. Like I mean, I'm not totally against it. I could see it being possible or in the cards or whatever, but there's just so much to being an indie author that seems to fit a certain personality type that maybe doesn't work so well with traditional publishing. I like to have that control. I like to be able to see how many sales I'm making and have and be able to spend on advertising and know whether the advertising is performing okay or not. My first book is traditionally published, by the way. Design for Hackers was traditionally published, and that was a good experience for me. I really don't know if I could have done it without that vote of confidence from a publisher that had a vision that said, hey, this could be a book. They reached out to me. But once I had that accomplishment under my belt and knew that I could do it, then it's just, I did the whole thing where you go through Publishers Marketplace and you look for agents and put together a proposal, and I got some lukewarm responses and I got some non-responses, and I just hate waiting for permission to do something that I don't need permission to do. And I don't know how to say this right. Like there aren't traditional publishers out there really that I can like look at and point to and say like they publish the type of book that I want to publish. Like, don't get me wrong, I read a ton of great traditionally published books. I don't read a lot in my genre. Like if I'm reading a book, it's like nonfiction history or something like that. But like self-help genre, I'm not reading the traditionally published. I'm not reading stuff that the traditional publishers are putting out. So
Because it's a bit bland.
I don't know. It just doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't interest me,
Similarly.
why should? Yeah. Why would my
Yeah.
book interest them?
Yeah, I do feel though, because everything for them, they can't take risks the way that an indie can. And so a lot of, to me, what's coming out is sort of watered down, designed for mass appeal. And if we think about pop music, the same is true as well. It's really like, hard to remember, forgettable. It's forgettable stuff. So
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Well, I'm that way with everything. Like traditional publishing, it seems like you've got to really be bought into. I could be wrong, but it seems like you really have to be bought into popular culture and like the America game. It's like it's a very new. It has this snooty sort of New York thing to it, where there's just this assumption that like M&Ms and Coca-Cola are awesome, and like, or it's the same. I'm the same with like the music I listen to or the movies that I watch. Like
films.
I won't avoid everything mainstream, but like most of it just doesn't appeal to me, and it's the same with books. And so why, if I could find a traditional publisher that I felt like we had similar tastes, and that it wasn't going to go slow and it wasn't be this painful thing, like it's also like it's just sort of a conflict of interests. Like I heard this podcaster recently who was just like on this rant about their experience with traditional publisher and how they weren't sort of bending over backwards to accommodate the schedule that they had communicated, and like all these different things. And it was just realized like it just sounded so naive. Like, do you not realize like what their motives are? Like they have a portfolio and they're just trying to put out a bunch of different books, and you're just part of the portfolio. It's like this idea of throwing spaghetti against the wall. If you're working with a traditional publisher, you're the spaghetti.
Yeah,
I don't want to be the spaghetti. No, I want to throw the spaghetti. I want to throw my own spaghetti.
Best metaphor ever. No, it's true. I mean, they have acquired your book and you surrender the decision-making, the rights of decision-making, because, it is they know best. May I say my publishing company is disruptive because we publish books like this, Holly's Hell, 7 Years in a Thai Prison, has the Hembury Books logo, but she's a self-published author. She keeps all her royalties. She owns all her rights. We get out of the author's way and we say...
It's like a hybrid thing, right?
It's hybrid, but we don't keep any royalties at all. It's just the author invests in the costs of producing their book. We also do like wraparound marketing and stuff. And they then go forth and keep their royalties and things like that. And then they're free, But instead of going to different suppliers for like, where do I get a cover designer? Or how do I get a typesetter? We've got all of that. And we've got book coaching too. So it's like end to end, because, I'm a self-published author, and I like to say like Hembury Books has been getting out of author's way since 2023, because we don't want to, like the author knows best. The author knows best. And it's deeply personal. A book is so personal. And this is a subjective game. So why not let the author have freedom of self-expression,
Sure. Yeah, I think I've seen these sort of models cropping up, even with like, there was one I saw recently from, I don't know if can I even say about it. I don't even know if I can talk about publicly or not, but it was like very it was people from traditional publishing kind of doing this model where there's
Yeah, they've
services,
started to
there's
move
like a
into
team
it.
of professionals you can work with, but they're not taking the royalties. So
Yeah.
we'll see how those work out. Yeah.
And I've had my book rejected, like Brat, the guidebook, because I wrote a travel memoir. They rejected my book and said, "But would you like to pay to publish? This is our imprint. You know, it's £3,000 or whatever." And I looked at it, and it just seemed very costly. And the other thing is, they're in the shadows. They're not out loud and proud, going, "Our books are amazing." It's like a lesser cousin or something. Whereas I'm like, self-publishing is awesome. And we do heaps of social media, and we really like champion our authors, and we're actively trying to disrupt the industry. So, because I feel like if you use some of those services, they're sort of so meek. Do you know what I mean? Like, because they're the way they see traditional publishing is you need that permission and validation. And I just feel like, people say, oh, vanity publishing, like, the publisher that doesn't have a slush pile. I think, whose vanity? Do you need to know that the publisher who published your book has rejected hundreds or thousands of other manuscripts and they chose you? Or do you just want to set aside the question of whether or not you can publish your book? Let's go ahead and make it the best book it can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's tricky. I think if it's a big company, if they're not taking royalties, it's sort of like, well, what's going to motivate them to promote the books too?
Well, yeah, I feel that authors are best placed to do that. And we're building up our marketing services, but self-published authors are incredibly enterprising. And, there are so many ways that you can do it. So you don't have to spend a ton of money, but you spread the word about your book and you do events and all that kind of thing. And they're being successful and winning awards. So
Awesome.
do you have someone take care of the publishing of each of your books, or do you do that in-house?
It's funny. I just realized I'm pretty lucky. I do all of it. I do my cover design. I do my interior design. I kind of do my editing too, with the help of my readers. There's been one book that I did hire a designer to work on, like 100-word writing habit. I had a designer, experimented with that one, but for the most part, I do everything. I mean, I do my own bookkeeping. So.
Wow. That's amazing. You must be so busy. Okay, I know we've been talking for an hour, but I would love to hear about your newsletters. You've got 10,000 subscribers. And I say to author clients, a newsletter, when your second book, your third book comes out and it goes to your 10,000 subscribers, that's just incredibly powerful. How did you build up such a big following, and what value do you offer readers?
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably gotten up to where if a book comes out, I probably have maybe 20,000 that I can send it to, because I have the weekly newsletter Love Mondays, which is like a 2-minute read on inspiration to make it as a creative, along with some of books that I think that are cool, or quotes that I like, or cool tools for thought. And then I also have people subscribe to my blog, and I write really detailed income reports each month about my publishing business. And a lot of people subscribe to that separately. Some subscribe to both. And then some people are kind of on a list where they just get notified when I have a project. Now, the way that I compiled that list, it started off with a writing challenge that I did years ago that I called Getting Art Done. And the idea was that I was going to send out a chapter a day for 30 days. And I put up the landing page and I told people, hey, come sign up and get this book for free. And that single book, which was going to be its own book, ended up becoming 3 books, 2 of which are now written, became the Getting Art Done series. And then I pivoted that into Love Mondays, which came from some experimentation, but I do think that it is a useful model for authors to think about. Because if you have an email list and you email your list once every 2 or 3 years when you finally finish a book, a lot of people are going to say, well, who's this? And so it behooves you to have some sort of a consistent schedule. So what I've done with Love Mondays is I expand some of the ideas that maybe I've shared on, say, X or on TikTok, and I expand them into a really short essay. And it also gives me a chance to share quotes or books or cool tools that I like. And it's on a weekly schedule. So people get this. There's no pitch. There's no sales pitch to them or anything. Every once in a while, I might put something in a PS or something like that. But it's really just trying to give value to the readers, and people enjoy it a lot. And it also keeps my relationship warm with my readers, but it also gives me a chance to test out. It's one of my open mics where I get to test out my ideas and see, did anybody respond to this one and say, hey, I really like this one, or I really disagree with you, and now I'm unsubscribing, something like that. So that's it's really become a main focus of mine, actually, the Love Mondays newsletter. Even though it's just like a 2-minute read, I put sometimes hours just into that 2 minutes.
Wow. Just quickly, posting on Instagram and TikTok, do you think it actually converts into sales, or is more of that building the follower long-term strategy?
I sense that it leads to sales. I did it for a while. I built to 30,000 followers on TikTok. I was getting like millions of views, and then I just did it for a couple months and stopped doing it. I've kind of picked it up again. But I certainly noticed, like, when I'm getting views on my reels, I will see an uptick in people searching for my name.
Wow.
So I think that the big mistake that a lot of people make with social media, things like Instagram Reels or TikTok Reels, is that they just try to make it about the sales pitch, about trying to sell something. Same thing with the newsletter. Like, first, you just got to make something valuable that people enjoy. And then you got to just sort of trust that through the ether, they're going to find you. Now, I think there are ways to make the hard sales pitch too, but it helps to make it as subtle as you possibly can. I'm by far not an expert at that art. I try to focus on, let's just make something really interesting that people are going to engage with and see what happens there. Now that I only recently started having the Instagram store. So now I can tag products. And I still have yet to kind of see what results that's going to have. I'm still struggling to get my TikTok store up and running. TikTok is kind of strict about
with Shopify,
all the business documentation stuff. Sorry, what's that?
You're going to link your Shopify with your TikTok?
If they will let me, yeah. That's there's a TikTok app, and Shopify will just push the data to TikTok, and then the orders come into Shopify. Like I said, it's like this hub, this information hub, the one-click button for the entire web.
Amazing. Wow. Okay, David, finally, is there a book that's changed your life?
Oh, certainly. So many. Getting Things Done is maybe I don't know if that's too obvious for people. That's one, but maybe one of the sleeper hits I would say would be Your Brain at Work. And I think that the things that I've learned from Getting Things Done and Your Brain at Work, my book, Mind Management, Not Time Management, it's sort of inspired by the things that I learned in those books, and kind of bridges the gap when it comes to understanding how to organize your inputs and your creative energy, and use neuroscience understanding of your brain to try to be creative on command and accomplish the things that you want to accomplish.
Amazing. You are accomplishing so much. Mind-blowing. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, David.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. This has been a lot of fun.